What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Around the Table Sports. Now, for those of you that didn't know, today is a huge day for the world of high school football recruiting, as the number one overall defensive tackle in the nation, Damon Payne, made his announcement. Now, before we get into it, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. We do constant uploads about high school football recruiting, college football, and the NFL, and you already know with basketball coming back, we're going to be taking a look at that as well. But let's get into what we want to talk about today, and that is the number one overall defensive tackle in the nation, number one player from Michigan, number 14 overall, Damon Payne, committed to the University of Alabama. Now, the schools leading up to this were a little bit intriguing. For the number one defensive tackle in the nation, he was considering Alabama, Arizona State, USC, and Kentucky. Now, from all reports from 24/7 Sports, the trail went cold at all of these schools aside from Kentucky and University of Alabama. Now, Kentucky was trying to preach the angle of we are closer to home, but reportedly that wasn't something that Payne was too interested in. He was fine with leaving. And it's crazy to me that the number one player in your state doesn't even consider you, speaking of Michigan State and Michigan. Now, this is absolutely incredible because, as y'all will remember, a video a few days ago, we were talking about how just a few months ago, Alabama was ranked 50th in the nation at recruiting, and now, after today, they're still at number 2 in the nation, but they have a combined score of, according to 24/7 Sports, of 280.75. So, Ohio State's number 1 with 305, and Oregon is now 3 with like 261. So Alabama has a pretty comfortable lead, and they still have plenty of room in the class to go. And I mean plenty. They might take around 27 players. But y'all, this is absolutely insane, as this is Alabama's 4th 5-star in the class of 2021, matching only Ohio State as a team with 4 5-stars. And they're not out of the running for quite a few 5-stars. If we go down the list of what I believe to be realistic to semi-realistic picks for the University of Alabama, and we'll get into that, you have Corey Foreman, Amarius Mims, Tristan Lay, Jason Marshall, and Jaquinski McKinstry. Now, starting from the top and going down, Corey Foreman has given his top schools, and I think it's probably likely that he stays either at USC or goes to the SEC. Now, bad news, Alabama fans, the two schools you're competing against for Corey Foreman in the SEC are LSU and Georgia. Two schools you really don't want to be competing against for anybody. LSU coming off of a great year, Kirby Smart being one of the top recruiters in the nation. Still, I feel like Alabama is in a good place as of right now for Corey Foreman. Next, we have Amarius Mims. Now, this one is where I start to feel a little bit less confident. He seems to be a Georgia lean, according to 24/7 Sports overall. We talked about this the other day. But the only way I think that Bama sways him or Tristan Lay is if they convince one of them that someone in this class is going to be playing guard, right? Because they already have the Brockermeyer twins, number 1 overall tackle, number 1 overall center. They have the number 2 overall guard in the nation at Terrence Ferguson. And then they have the number 3 overall tackle in the nation at J.C. Latham. So both Amarius Mims and Tristan Lay play tackle. So unless one of them is going to kick inside to guard, I don't see either of them going with the University of Alabama, but crazier things have happened. But the last two, Jason Marshall and Jaquinski McKinstry, are both very realistic options. Now, Jason Marshall's probably going to go to Florida, but Jaquinski McKinstry's in a 3-team race right now with the University of Alabama, Auburn, and Clemson, with Clemson being the dark horse. And I have to admit, if I had to bet, I would bet he goes to the University of Alabama, because the University of Alabama is going to be recruiting cornerbacks very hard this year. They have a pretty big need for them. But guys, let's back up a bit and talk about Damon Payne, the man of the hour. So if we look at 24/7 Sports overall, they have him listed at 6'3.5", 297, but today they were talking about how he probably plays more around 290, and he carries the weight very good. If you were to look at him, you wouldn't think that he weighed 290 pounds. He is incredibly athletic, very fast in the cone drills, and he seems to be somebody that has been on the radar for 5-star destiny since he was in the 8th grade. That's when 24/7 Sports' Steve Wilford said that he kind of started popping up on the scene, was in the 8th grade, and he was just dominating guys that are already in college now, guys that were much older than him at camps. Now, he comps to Ashawn Robinson, ironically a guy that was at the University of Alabama before him. And I know that University of Alabama right now has a pretty deep defensive front, at least in rotation, right? I mean, last year, DJ Dale, true freshman, goes down with an injury but showed a lot of upside. But Damon Payne is a guy that could absolutely crack in to at least a rotation. For those of you that know, the University of Alabama is really big on depth at the defensive line and filtering guys in and out. I mean, for those of you that remember, just think back a few years ago. Quinnen Williams really only started 1 year at Alabama. He was a rotational player before that, but he went number 3 overall to the New York Jets. So that just shows you that at the University of Alabama, if you're good enough to crack into the rotation, you're good enough to start at some point, and you're definitely good enough to get drafted. And that's the kind of expectations that people are laying at the feet of Damon Payne. Whether he hits them or not, we'll see. However, if you watch his film, it absolutely looks like he can. He's very quick off the line. And for those of you that kept up with Bama's past recruiting classes, specifically last year's, if you pair him with some of the guys they got coming off the edge in last year's class, I mean, you could have a great defensive front. And not to mention, they still have Ishmael Sofster, who a few years ago was the number 1 overall defensive tackle in the nation before he plummeted in the rankings. But regardless, his talent was undeniable. Why he plummeted, I'm still not 100% sure. So if you know the reason to why Sofster plummeted the way he did, please comment down below, because I really can't remember why. But guys, all this to say that Nick Saban, if you were counting on 2021 and 2020 to be the downfall of the University of Alabama, I would continue to stay inside and not watch football for a bit, because they're just getting more and more talented. Like I said, they already have 4 5-stars and are realistically in the running for 5 more. And it's this sort of just perpetual greatness that I think it needs to be acknowledged with Alabama and Nick Saban. And I think it just goes to show that you can't count Nick Saban out and Alabama out while Nick Saban is still the coach. This coaching staff, it looks very good. He's got a lot of young guys in there. And, I mean, the process has to be trusted. What more can you say? All in all, y'all, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. This is a new channel. We cover, as I said in the beginning, college football, high school football, NFL, and we will absolutely be moving on to the NBA. Well, that's it. See ya.